Welcome back to Basic Microeconomics. So we're still in Module 1, the economic way of thinking. So in the previous week, we talked about what economic is, the definitions of micro and macroeconomics, what are marginal costs and marginal benefits, and also the three important decision pitfalls. For this week, we will be talking about comparative advantage. So by the end of this lesson, the student should be able to explain and apply the principle of comparative advantage and absolute advantage. Okay? So the principle of comparative advantage tells us that everyone does best when each person concentrates on the activities for which his or her opportunity cost is lowest. So we all know that some people are considered as a jack of all trades but master of none. So this comparative advantage tells us that we have to specialize, we have to focus on something so that we can be the master of that activity or that work. Okay? And when we consider doing a certain job or doing a certain activity, we need to consider the opportunity cost. And we already discussed what opportunity cost is. So it is the benefit foregone when we choose an alternative over the other. And again, why do we need to choose a certain alternative? It's because our resources are limited. And so we need to choose what is important or what should be our priority for a given resource or a given time or a given effort. Okay? So, what are the sources of this comparative advantage? So, there can be many sources of comparative advantage. It could be talent, education, training and experience. So how does this make one have an advantage and a comparative advantage? Of course, for instance, some people seem to be naturally gifted at programming computers while others seems to have a special knack for fixing bikes. But comparative advantage is more often the result of education, training, or experience. Of course, we have an edge when we have the training, when we have the education, when we have the experience. Just like when you apply for a job, the employer will choose you based on the skills that you possess. And when you're able to possess some skills, then you would have an edge over the others. And just like when we apply this in a comparative advantage, you have to devote your time or your resources to a certain skill or activity that will benefit you the most. Okay, that's why an employer will choose an applicant which has more skills because she or he will think that you will bring also more benefits to his company if ever he or she hires you. Okay, and also in terms of natural resources, so of course you have a comparative advantage if you have the available materials, you have the available factors of production, and this is closely related to the factor endowments. So countries with plentiful natural resources will generally have a comparative advantage in products that uses those resources. Okay, and also we have the large scale production. Okay, so when you produce in large scale, you can minimize the cost. Okay, because the cost will be lower as more items are being produced. And of course, here is technology. Okay, so if your country or your company has advanced technology, it could make production faster, efficient, and easier. Okay, and you can produce high quality of products because these are automated. And also you could consider the product cycle. Okay, so when the products enters the market or introduced to the market, and eventually when these products will also diminish or goes out of the market. And we also have the non-price competitiveness of the producers. So this cover factors such as the standard of product design and innovation, product reliability, and even the quality of after sales support. And we also have the non-economic factors. Sometimes, like language, can be a comparative advantage. It's easier to transact when you have this common knowledge of a certain language. When you can converse or communicate more properly, it could be an advantage. So, for example, jobs which requires fluency in English, when your nationality is well trained in speaking in English, or your school was able to develop your English speaking skills, then you have your comparative advantage. You have your edge when you apply for jobs that requires English speaking or English language proficiency. Okay? And now let's go to the term absolute advantage. So, the absolute advantage describes a scenario in which one entity can manufacture a product at a higher quality and a faster rate for a greater profit than other competing business or country can accomplish. So, this looks into the efficiency of production. So, when we say efficiency, it means that we're able to produce more with a certain amount of resource. Like, there are more outputs compared to your inputs. Just for example, within 1 hour you can do the dishes, you can wash your clothes, you can cook food. So you have an absolute advantage compared to someone who can only cook food within an hour. Okay, so it means that you can do more jobs within an hour. Like, you can do 3 jobs within an hour compared to somebody who can only do 1 task within an hour. So therefore, you have an absolute advantage because you can do more within your limited time. Okay, so absolute advantage looks at the efficiency of producing a single product. This analysis helps countries avoid the production of products that would yield little or no demand, leading to losses. Okay, so this analysis of absolute advantage or disadvantage helps in identifying the types of goods that a country chooses to produce. So how do we differentiate this absolute advantage with comparative advantage? Again, we have mentioned earlier that comparative advantage looks into the opportunity cost. So the opportunity cost of a given option is equal to the forfeited benefits that could have been achieved by choosing an available alternative in comparison. In general, when the profit from 2 products is identified, analysts would calculate the opportunity cost of choosing one option over the other. So let's take these example of Beth and Paula. So the question is, should Beth update her own web page? Okay, why does this question arise? So let's look at the situation. So Beth is the only professional bicycle mechanic in a small community, while Paula is the only professional HTML programmer. Okay. However, Beth also happens to be an even better HTML programmer than Paula. Okay, so here Beth can do both. She can program and she can also repair bikes. So if the amount of time each of them takes to perform these tasks is as shown in Table 1, and if each regards the two tasks as equally pleasant or unpleasant, does the fact that Beth can program faster than Paula imply that Beth should update her own webpage? Okay, so the question here asks if Beth should shift from being a mechanic to becoming a programmer, given that she can do programming faster than Paula. So let us take a look at the table. You can see here that between Beth and Paula, Beth can do better in updating a web page and also in a bicycle repair. So as you can see, Beth is faster by 10 minutes because Beth can do the job in 20 minutes while Paula can do the job in 30 minutes. Meanwhile, in a bicycle repair, Beth is still faster because she can do the task in 10 minutes while Paula can do the task in 30 minutes. So in both ways, we can say that Beth has absolute advantage compared to Paula in overall because she can do much within a small span of time, in just a short span of time. However, is it advisable for Beth to choose becoming a programmer instead of being a mechanic? So that's why we need to use the comparative advantage to help us analyze if is it really a good decision to shift to becoming a programmer. Okay, so let's compute the opportunity cost. So for Beth, if she chooses to update a web page, it will cost her 2 bicycle repairs. Why is it will cost her 2 bicycle repairs? Okay, so you can see here that within 20 minutes, she can update a web page. But also with the same span of time of 20 minutes, she could have done 2 bicycle repairs. Why 2 bicycle repairs? Because it will take 1 bicycle repair only 10 minutes. Meanwhile, if she chooses to repair a bicycle, 1 bicycle repair, it will cost her half of updating a web page. So mean half a web page, half updating of a web page. Okay. So how do we obtain this computations? Okay, so we can use it. Just look at the amounts here. Like you get the ratio. Okay, you have 2:1. So that is 2 bicycle repairs. You have 20 over 10. Okay, so that would be 2 bicycle repairs. And you have 10 over 20. That's half. Meanwhile, for Paula, if she chooses to update a web page, that will take her 30 minutes. And by updating a web page, she could have done a bicycle repair, which will take her 30 minutes. So if we will get the ratio, that is the same amount of time. So 1 web page is equivalent to 1 bicycle repair. Okay. And how about bicycle repair? What will she lose if she chooses bicycle repair? If she repairs 1 bike, she would lose also 1 updating of web page. So practically, she loses 1 over the other at either job. Okay. Now, looking at these available data, do you think Beth should become a programmer instead than being a bicycle repair? So let's look at the opportunity cost. Okay, who has a lower opportunity cost of updating a web page? Who has a lower opportunity cost of having or updating a web page? So if you can look at the opportunity cost of Beth and Paula in terms of updating a web page, it is evident that Paula has a lower opportunity cost of updating a web page because she can lose only one bicycle repair. Unlike Beth, if she choose to update a web page, she would lose two bicycle repairs. So in this first round, we can say Paula has a comparative advantage in updating a web page. Why? Because she has a lesser opportunity cost compared to Beth. And why she has a lower opportunity cost? Because she will only lose one bicycle repair compared to Beth, which can lose two bicycle repairs. Meanwhile, for the opportunity cost of a bicycle repair, Beth will lose half of the updating of a web page. Meanwhile, Paula could lose one updating of one web page. So based on the computation, who has a lower opportunity cost between Beth and Paula in terms of bicycle repair? So we can see here that Beth has a lower opportunity cost of a bicycle repair. So therefore, Beth has a comparative advantage in bicycle repair compared to Paula. Why? Because she will only lose half of updating of a web page compared to Paula, who could lose one web page. Okay, so let's try example 2. Maggie and Anna are bakers. Both of them can bake a cake and bread. Within 3 hours, Maggie and Anna can finish baking either of the following. So within 3 hours, Maggie can bake either 5 cakes or 10 loaves of bread. Okay, again, in 3 hours, Maggie can either bake 5 cakes or 10 loaves of bread. Meanwhile, Anna can bake within 3 hours either 8 cakes or 12 loaves of bread. So based on the given data, which do you think, or who do you think has an absolute advantage? Okay, who has an absolute advantage? Remember, absolute advantage means that you can produce more within a given resource. So you are efficient. You have more outputs with your limited inputs. Okay, both of them are given a time duration of 3 hours, and if you can observe, each of them can produce many cakes and many loaves of bread, but Anna can produce more within 3 hours compared to Maggie. Within 3 hours, Anna can produce 8 cakes. And also within 3 hours, Anna can produce 12 loaves of bread. But do you think Anna should focus on the two and divide her 3 hours into cakes and loaves of bread? Well, comparative advantage tells us that we should focus or specialize on the things that we can, on the things or activities wherein we have a lower opportunity cost. And let us compute what would be the opportunity cost of each of these products. Okay, so for Maggie, if she bakes 1 cake, okay, how many loaves of bread will she lose? Okay, So since out of within 3 hours, okay, Maggie can bake 5 cakes, and also within the same time she can also bake 10 loaves of bread. So if she chooses to bake um 5 cakes, what would be the opportunity cost of 1 cake? So for every cake that she will bake, how many loaves of bread will she lose? Okay, so here she will lose 2 loaves of bread. Why? So for every one there is 2, because for every 5 it is equivalent to 10 loaves of bread. Meanwhile, if she chooses to bake breads, okay, what will she lose? What is the ratio of the opportunity cost? Okay, so that would be 0.5 cake, or half a cake. So for every 1 loaf bread that she will bake, she will lose half of a cake. Okay, and then meanwhile for Anna, if she chooses to bake 1 cake, what will she lose? She will lose 1.5 loaves of bread. Okay, so how do we get that? We have to get the ratio, okay, of the 8 cakes and 12 loaves of bread. So that will be 12 over 8. Okay, so every 1 cake she will be losing 1.5 loaves of bread. And when Anna chooses to bake 1 loaf of bread, she will lose 0.67, or 1/3 of a cake. Okay, so let us go back to the same questions we asked with Beth and Paula. Remember that in comparative advantage, we need to choose an activity which yields a lower opportunity cost. So in baking a cake, which of the two, or who among the two has a lower opportunity cost? So let's compare the opportunity cost of Maggie and Anna in terms of baking 1 cake. Maggie will lose 2 loaves of bread per 1 cake, while Anna will lose 1.5 loaves of bread per 1 cake. So since Anna has a lower opportunity cost with 1.5 loaves of bread over Maggie with 2 loaves of bread, so therefore Anna has a comparative advantage in terms of baking a cake. And so Anna should focus more on baking a cake. Meanwhile, in baking a loaf of bread, Maggie will have an opportunity cost of losing a 0.5 or 0.50, or half of a cake, and Anna will lose 1/3 of a cake. So which of, or who among the two will lose a lower or will yield a lower opportunity cost in baking a loaf bread? So it is Maggie who will have a 0.50, or half a cake opportunity cost. So therefore, Maggie has a comparative advantage in baking a loaf bread. Okay? So therefore, Maggie should focus on baking a cake. So that is how you're going to compare companies, or compare economies in terms of the comparative advantage. So again, so in this example, Maggie should focus on, or Maggie has a comparative advantage in terms of baking a bread or producing bread because she it yields a lower opportunity cost compared to Anna. Meanwhile, Anna has a comparative advantage in terms of baking a cake because she will lose only 1.5 loaves of bread compared to Maggie, which will lose 2 loaves of bread. Okay, so uh, those are our examples. I hope you have learned something for today. So, see you next time for our next lesson.